All right, so thank you for joining us. We have our fourth now installment of our non-public virtual PD, and this time Jake and I are focusing on reinforcement. Just a few housekeeping items. If you have not registered in Frontline for Act 48, make sure you do that if you want credit for those. We will take attendance at the completion of this, so make sure you stay for the entirety of the meeting. These sessions will be recorded. I hope you found them on the Padlet so you can kind of check in and see some things. We'll also have a bunch of resources listed on there for you so that you can see different items and activities that relate to this session. And then make sure that you stay until the end for the survey code. Listen, we have a prize this month. We're super excited about it. So once you complete the survey, Jake and I are going to do a random drawing. So we'll get that. We'll figure out who that is by the end of the week, and we will send you an email and showcase it during our January professional development. So a couple of our objectives for today, we're really going to be focusing on some relationship building. We'll talk about the types of reinforcement, positive and negative, and then different schedules of reinforcement. So first of all, before we get into this, what is reinforcement? This is whatever happens after a behavior that makes it more likely to happen in the future. And we're going to look at some examples as we're moving along here. We're starting off with building positive relationships. So you said we're talking about reinforcement. And why are we talking about relationships? Because everything we do is relational. We want ourselves to be reinforcing for the students that we're working with. Whenever we build our relationships with them, whenever we build trust with them, we're more likely to get a better response from them. But if we take a look at some of this information here, human relationships and the effects of relationships on relationships are the building blocks of healthy development. So if you think about this, the relationships that the student, maybe you're the parents of the students you're servicing, the relationships they have with their parents, and then the relationships that your students have with their parents really affects the relationships that they have with you. And maybe we can see those kinds of things in our own lives of we hear the saying of the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, right? So those relationships impact those things as we go along. Students who feel connected to the adults around them are more likely to want to demonstrate positive behavior. Students do need a variety of positive relationships to stay connected at school. Research does show it takes one positive person in a child's life to really change the trajectory of their schooling, of their life. So just thinking you can be that person through those relationships is so powerful. And then positive relationships decrease the likelihood that conflict will occur. Doesn't mean it won't completely subside, but decreases the likelihood. And then it helps us to recognize student signals. When we know our students, we can recognize those things about them, or we can tell, like, whenever Johnny's upset, he like really tenses up, or he starts to breathe heavy, or he starts pacing. Those are the types of things that we recognize about students whenever we have a relationship with them. We have on here the 2x10 strategy. We're talking about relationships and meeting our students where they are. It's the little conversations that build the relationships and make an impact on each student's. All those little things that we do, those little tidbits that we have conversations with our students really impacts the relationships we have with them. But really, this is engaging for 2 minutes every day for 10 consecutive days about anything the child wants to talk about. If it's, Pokemon or the solar system, or maybe their siblings, anything like that, you can talk with them about that. Even if you don't like Pokemon, you just pretend that you like Pokemon, because we want to engage them with something that's not academic related, not behavior related. But the focus really is on connecting with that student, building that rapport with them. Affirmative attention. Jake, you hop in whenever, but I don't think you're ready yet. Okay, you just give me the thumbs up and you hop right on. All right, affirmative attention. So what is affirmative attention? So when students make a good choice and you notice it, you can respond with that attention and affirmation. So with students raising a quiet hand, hey, thanks so much for raising a quiet hand. We're pointing out the good. Why do we do this? Well, your attention goes where your attention goes, energy flows. If we're looking for those positives, we're going to have a positive environment. If we're only finding the negatives, it's going to be a negative environment. It's easy to point out those things that are going wrong, sometimes because they take up the most of our attention. But if we really try to focus on what's positive, what is going right with this student and point those things out, that helps boost their esteem, their morale, build the relationships. So that's important. And then whenever you give a reminder, give a direction, ask a question, and look for students who are doing what you want, acknowledge them. So I was just having a conversation the other day with a teacher, and I said, "Oh my gosh, everything was going so well in this classroom." And I said, "You know what though?" I said, "Pair what you are saying to, or what the behavior is to, one of your rules. Like, oh, you are so respectful whenever you raise that quiet hand." I know that was really hard for you to do because you were excited to answer. So pairing some of those expectations with the behavior is super important. We have this nice little visual here. As you can see, we put a little Padlet symbol up there in the corner. We do have this for you within the Padlet. So if you like this visual, you can get on there, you can download it and print it for yourself as a reminder. But we thought this was really great just to serve as a reminder, as a visual for us. I don't know about you all, but I'm a visual person. I like to see things. It helps remind me of things. But we have the preventative reminder. So during group work, oh, friends, our voices are at a level 2. Then we can provide that affirmative attention. Oh, I noticed table 1, their voices are at a level 2. Table 2, their voices are at a level 2. Great job. So we're providing that affirmative attention to them. Effective commands. So we are commanding our students, eyes on me, and then we can provide the affirmative attention. Oh, I see table 2. Their eyes are on me. Great job, table 2. Oh, table 1, their eyes are on me. Great job, table 1. And then opportunities to respond. What is the word? And you can have the entire group respond to that. So provide those opportunities to respond. You can then provide the affirmative attention. Hey, we're working so hard in here. And something that this makes me think about is the importance of focusing on the effort rather than the outcome. So some students are working so hard with what they're doing, and maybe they're just not getting things right. But let's praise the efforts of the students and what they're doing, because we want them to try. Oh, we've got Double Jake on here. Welcome, Double Jake. He's back to us here.
Oh my goodness. Sorry about that.
Okay. No, you're good.
So we're talking about, oh, so, go ahead. Okay. So we talk about what will be reinforcing for the student. It's not rocket science. You guys we've talked with some of you before. It's just asking the student really, and that's why increasing those relationships is important. Maybe they're in Boy Scouts, or going back to that Pokemon. I think that's like a major reinforcer with a lot of my students this year. We have excuse me, the little Padlet symbol there on this side, and that's just a reminder that we have some preference assessments that you could utilize within your classroom setting for some of your students. If you're like, I'm just like really not sure, and then students really not like willing to say like, I love this or I love that. So you could provide choices. You could ask a parent or guardian. An open house is a perfect opportunity, or parent teacher conferences. Maybe you haven't had them yet, or there's a spring parent teacher conference, or just the beginning of the year. You can observe and utilize those preference assessment. Just one thing, we all know that like every student doesn't like the same thing. Some are motivated by, if you're allowed to give edibles or edible food, something like that. Like, I was like the sports kid that like give me some time with the gym teacher, and I am all in for really reinforcing that behavior.
As far as reinforcement being positive or negative, so we're going to think about this in terms of math. So positive, we are adding; negative, we are taking away. So with our positive reinforcement, we would add something that is pleasant or desired for the student, either a toy, maybe it's food, maybe it's attention. And on the other hand, we could provide negative reinforcement. So we would take away something unpleasant or undesired. So that could be work. If the student is maybe they're cleaning up the blocks like we want them to, or say, great job cleaning up those blocks, I'm going to help you. So we're removing some of that demand from them. They have less to do, because they were completing the task that was asked of them. Maybe a restriction is being removed, or maybe we would be providing something to help remove like a headache or an ailment, something like that.
Our
So
next slide. Oh.
go on, Jake. You were waiting for my click. Beep, beep. Here we go.
Yeah, I was waiting for the click.
Yeah.
Just to kind of extend our positive reinforcement talk. all behavior, the functions are social, tangible, or maybe some sort of activity. It's a lot on this slide, but it really breaks. Love this slide that Amanda created. It just breaks down um the different ways that we can reinforce. I always love to talk about this nonverbal praise one for the social. It goes back to those relationships, and this is one of the easiest, most sustainable reinforcements that we can provide a student. A high five or a thumbs up or a great job or a smile or a wink. Those can go so far. We don't have to necessarily go out, buy like a treasure box or buy those Pokemon cards or whatever. So that those social reinforcers are super beneficial, which is why just going back to establishing those relationships with our student and why it's so important, it can be so powerful. I always like to also talk about peer recognition, encouraging classmates and really just building that classroom family as well. We can talk about the tangibles, however. Some students do like stickers or stamps, certificates, just like a classroom, like Mr. Graham's wow for the day, and just like signing your name. Like this little piece of paper can be really powerful for students as well. Bonus points, extra credit, classroom privileges, line leader, teacher's assistant. We all know how much students love being the line leader or the teacher helper. It's like they get to just feel like a VIP, a super important person. So last thing is special seating that we talked about. One of the students who I support, it simply is, you earn the reinforcer. They do a token economy. And if you earn a certain amount of points, one of her prizes is just sitting at the teacher's desk for the day or like at appropriate times. And those kids are so amped about about sitting in the teacher's seat. And again, how simple is that to incorporate into your room? Last thing is our activity reinforcers, extra computer or table time, choice of classroom activity, leading a class game, special class project. Before I came to the IU as if I was a phys ed teacher, and just because of the person who I was, some of my students worked towards earning time in the gym with me for the PE class. So that was a simple reinforcer. They were super interested in it. It was very high amount of interest for that. So that was just their thing. So you never know. Like again, that all goes back to just really reinforcing those relationships and getting to know your students and what they'll work towards or what's really reinforcing for them.
So we do have negative reinforcement examples as well. And we talked a little bit about that already. So maybe decreasing the number of tasks that they're required to complete. If you have a student who's maybe they're really having a hard time with math, the class has 20 problems they need to do, we're going to say, we're going to praise the effort. Oh, you are working so hard. You know what? Let's do, I'm just going to have you choose 10 problems rather than 20. We're increasing the likelihood that they're going to comply with that task, that they're going to complete that. Maybe we're removing an undesired stimulus, like we talked about. We're providing some sort of maybe like Advil or Tylenol to help decrease a headache. Maybe we'd be reducing homework. Friends, we worked so hard in class. Listen, maybe you don't even have homework planned for the night, but you're going to say, because you worked so hard, you know what? No homework tonight. Woohoo! And the kids are like, yeah, we're excited, no homework, right? So we're removing that from them, so they don't have that extra work. It's a negative reinforcement. We're removing something for appropriate behavior. And then maybe it's removing a restriction. Maybe if there's assigned seating in the cafeteria, we've had great behavior in the cafeteria, no problems at all. You know what? You get to choose who you sit next to on Friday. Well, those kids, what are they saying? Hot dog, right? We're so excited. We're ready to sit next to someone. I get to sit next to Leo. He's my best friend forever, and I'll never get to see him anymore. That's so exciting, right? We're removing that restriction for good behavior. So we're providing that reinforcement.
Our next slide is going to talk about schedules of reinforcement and when and why we're going to use a different variety. We'll talk about three specific ones. You want to just click through there, Amanda? Thank you.
I got it. I'm on it.
Thank you. Thank you, Vanna White. Our first schedule of reinforcement would be, we call it frequent. We usually use a frequent schedule of reinforcement to establish some sort of behavior. Out of seat behavior, I'll just do like a 101 example. So if the student's demonstrating out of seat behavior, our desired behavior would be if the student was in their seat. So every time the student would be sitting in their seat, as soon as they're sitting in their seat, we would reinforce. So I'll just use like a mini M&M example. So, little Susie sitting in her seat. Excellent job, Susie. Here's your M&M. It's helping us to establish that behavior. And it's really best to use this when we're teaching that new skill or the non-preferred skill. You can see that example that Amanda actually added there. Johnny dislikes raising his hand. Each time he calls out, the behavior is ignored. Each time he raises a quiet hand, he is praised. So that would be like the social example that we talked about a little bit earlier. So again, just establishing that new behavior is something that we're really trying to increase. And then the idea would be our next schedule of reinforcement,
Mhm.
which would
Yeah.
be extending and not every time going to a random one.
Right. So this is really what we would strive for with our students, to have a random schedule of reinforcement. And maybe you do some of these things in your classroom. So this is where you would catch the person being good, to provide reinforcement when we're noticing the behavior that is happening. We would use this often. I mean, we don't have time to sit next to a certain student who's maybe Susie, who, like Jake was saying, is out of their seat all the time. But maybe when we do provide that frequency of reinforcement, and Susie's okay, we're making progress. She's still out of her seat, but we're seeing less time that she's out of her seat. This kind of goes back to that data tracking that we were talking about before. So if we can see there's a decrease in the number of times Susie's out of her seat, we can now start randomly reinforcing, oh, Susie, nice job. Or we can give those nonverbals, like Jake said, the thumbs up, or something that's established between the teacher and student. So an example here, a staff member is working with a small group and may provide reinforcement to some or all of them randomly. So if we're working at a small group, as I'm sure you do, maybe we're working on something and I might look up and say like, oh, I can see Jake's over in his seat. Great job, Jake. He's working really hard over there. Dawn's over there in her seat. Okay, Amy, great job. Raising a quiet hand. Go ask Miss So-and-so, or ask three before me. So we're providing those random reinforcers for our students.
Our last schedule of reinforcement is a structured. We specify an expectation and a reinforcer. I almost like think of this as like it's sort of like a mini contract between you and the student. The super important thing about a structured schedule of reinforcement is you need to be super specific and saying like, for example, below it says, Joey, I have a timer set for 7 minutes. During that time, I need you to correctly finish 4 math problems. You notice you didn't say just finish those math problems. It's correctly finish 4 math problems. When you do that, then you can have 5 minutes of free time or, iPad time or whatever that might be. It's basically going back to, remember our first PD, we mentioned if then statements. So it's getting super specific for the if, Joe's finishing those 4 math problems correctly. We have that timer, we have the time parameter for Joey. And then once you do that, then you can have that free time. And kids will really know, if there's gray areas, they're going to work that system. That's exactly why we need to have the expectation with that reinforcer.
Mhm. Yep, absolutely. This is one of my favorite slides, actually. When we're talking about, I know this kind of comes back to those relationships again, but really we want to be making these deposits into our students' bank account, right? We can certainly pick out those things that are going wrong through the day, but what we want to do is we're making these investments within our students. We are maybe giving them opportunities to share. We're taking time to play with them. Maybe we're sending notes home. We're having little happy grams, something like that. We're providing praise to the student or time and attention. We have empathy for them. There was this quote, I'm going to get the quote wrong, you guys, though. Maybe look it up if you want. I can't find it, but it's about like, sometimes the behaviors that a student has makes us so mad, but if we really look at the whole story, it's something that could bring us to tears. So, what we really want to do is just invest within these students and, provide all of these opportunities to invest in their emotional bank account. So then whenever we do have to make a withdrawal of some sort, we're not pulling from we're not pulling from a depleted account, right? So we want to build them up and build them up and build them up. So whenever we do have to make a withdrawal, it's not an empty account we're pulling from. This is
Uh,
another.
oh,
Oh, sorry,
sorry.
Jake. I didn't know if you were still there.
Yeah, I'm still here. My video just being
That's okay.
a little wonky, but the show must go on. This is one of like I'd say like our major themes for this school year, better before best. We have these students that we talked about, they come from, maybe a family that's not like what we're expecting, or they have the trauma pieces that we talked about in earlier PDs, but we're not going to go from all these disruptive behaviors to sitting immaculately in their seat constantly at a level 0 with their hands folded at their tables. So we're looking for better behavior before we get to that best behavior. That's why we have our data tracking sheets. Maybe they were out of their seats oh my gosh, sometimes it seems like it's, 60 or 70 times per day for goodness sake. But then, each week we're tracking that data and it goes down each week. And, each week we're getting better, and that's what we're looking for. Even though it does, it seems in the trenches, it seems like a lot, but as we're looking for that better behavior before best. Amanda has this little example here of undesired behavior of running out of the classroom, better behavior. I need a stinking break while they're running out of the classroom. While we don't want them to say stinking or freaking, and it's better than running out of the classroom and heaven forbid running out of the school. And then the best behavior is usually in visual or communicating with the teacher that you need that break, or pointing to that card that has the word break on it, or some sort of nonverbal signal that you're going to utilize with the student.
Mhm. As far as group contingencies, this really helps to strengthen these social skills and teamwork with our students. All students would have to display desired behavior. So for example, if we have this whole group contingency, for example, students would receive a compliment in the hallway from another teacher. This would result in maybe you have like a pom-pom jar or something, like a compliment jar. They would get a little pom-pom in there. That would serve as a visual for those students. So that they can see their progress of how they are doing within the classroom. Maybe once they get enough pom-poms, their jar fills up, we have a popcorn party in a movie. So they're working for something as a whole group, and that really helps to build those social skills, maybe encouraging one another. So maybe some of you have those already happening in your classroom. All right, Jake is frozen. So I'm going to continue on. Okay, so as we move into a longer break, so this is Jake and I were talking about why we were talking about reinforcement. We are moving into a longer break. So I know we're all thinking about Christmas and all these fun activities, and then we have a break. When we're coming back from break, sometimes we're going to see behaviors increase, right? They're out of our structured classroom environment. They're at home for a while, and then they're coming back right into that more structured environment. So just remember, model those desired behaviors, model what you want your students to see, give them opportunities to practice that. We find what we look for. So look for those positives, be intentional, and point them out. So again, like we're talking about relationships, when we look for something good, we're going to find it. So make a note to yourself. And I would challenge you, as we're moving into this maybe stressful, kind of hectic time of the year, look for those positive things. And then returning from break, make sure you're looking back, reteach the expected behaviors and routines to the students in the classroom, model the behaviors, provide those times for practice, and then reinforce those. So we want the students to see the good that they're doing. But that's a really good time to be reinforcing the appropriate or the desired behaviors that you have within your classroom after a break.
And then it froze.
And something that I want you to remember, don't forget how awesome you are and the difference that you're making for these students that you get to serve. They are so fortunate to have you, and we are appreciative of you showing up each time and just listening to what we have to say. We're really hoping this is beneficial for you, and we just hope you have a really great Christmas, a really great break. What questions do you have for us? Does anybody have a question for us, Amy or Claudia or Dawn? Anybody? Okay, I'm going to put in here. Let me put in the Padlet link here. So don't forget, check out that Padlet.
We're just going to say we have added a ton of reinforcers and ways that you can reinforce appropriate and expected behaviors within your classroom settings. So check those out. Don't forget to submit your feedback for chance to be entered into the prize for January.
No, it's a prize this month. We're drawing by the end of the week.
What am I talking about? Yeah, it's this month.
Yeah, it's this month. Yeah. So fill out the survey. If there's nothing else, that's all we have. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions. We are happy to be a support to you, and have a great rest of the week.
Thanks, everybody.